Good afternoon, 49er faithful. Welcome to a Friday afternoon show. Very excited to bring in my guest today, none other than Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Jack, here we are, NFC Championship week, and the 49ers are in it. How are you feeling today, good sir?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to the game. Wish it was Sunday already. Just trying to wrap up my pregame write up for the day and get that ready for tomorrow. So looking forward to it. This is going to be a absolutely amazing game, fun game, I think, to watch.
Going to be one for the storybooks, and that's what this season has been so far. It's felt magical to this point, going into Dallas to beat the freaking Cowboys, going into Lambeau to beat the Packers. I mean, this is my teenage self's dream scenario, to take out all of these teams that gave me such angst as a young gentleman and so much suffering. And here we are, the redemption path. And now it feels a little bit of a mix between the Rams of the late 80s or the greatest show on turf that broke my heart late in the 90s. The redemption tour just continues in this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you between the Cowboys and the Packers, and now we get the Rams here for the championship game. I really couldn't have worked out any better. I know we talked about this last week, I think, when we got together on Monday before the Packers game, about how we kind of wanted to see this progression. And yeah, and then on top of that, to possibly have the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I mean, come on, this is if you lived through the 80s and 90s, it doesn't get any whole lot better than this.
It doesn't get any better than that. And I know right now we are competing against the Niners with their live stream as well. It just the last couple of guys speaking at the podium, but we did have the update from Kyle Shanahan, which is not in our topic. So I just thought I would throw it out there because it is the relevant piece of information that everyone is looking for. And that's the health of Trent Williams. Kyle Shanahan officially listed Trent Williams and Jeff Wilson Jr. as the only folks on the injury report for the game, both as questionable, which gives me good hope. He did avoid the question by Grant Cohn, which was, hey, did you figure out if it was a high ankle sprain or a low ankle sprain? He answered, yes, I did figure out which it was. And Grant said, well, would you care to share that with us? No, I would not. So I like Eric Branch's thought on that was, well, if it were a low ankle sprain, maybe he might have shared it, that he might have said that. So potentially that is him alluding to it, but he's also next level with his gamesmanship, so he may know that going in. And well, if I say no, you'll think it's the high ankle sprain, but really it's the low ankle sprain.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for the 49ers this week because they really need him to be there.
Yeah.
I think, especially when you start to look at what the Rams have been able to do in the last couple of weeks with their pass rush. It's a tough deal for them not to have Trent Williams. And I don't think he's going to play. He hasn't practiced all week, and although they say that he's going to try to force himself to go, like Shanahan said today, they were in the same situation a week ago or 3 weeks ago when they went down to Los Angeles, and he wasn't able to go then either. So I think there's a little bit of gamesmanship there with keeping him as questionable and everything else that they're saying. That I don't think he's going to play. He hasn't practiced. I don't see how he goes.
That would be a real blow for the 49ers if he's unable to go. Although you got a phenomenal game out of Colton McKivitz the last time, you can always hope for Colton being able to step it up yet again. I just noticed that Robbie Austin came in early with the super chat just to give a little vibe to the Niners. Let's go 49ers. Love it, Robbie. Love the positivity. You know that I am all about that. All right, let's talk a little bit about how the 49ers got to where they are, the gauntlet that they have been on since, since the loss to Tennessee, if you want to go back that far. Jack, in your opinion, the 49ers are quite obviously tested throughout this, but have these road games in particular, the 49ers having to travel down to SoFi for Week 18, then needing to go out to Dallas to play the Cowboys, and then out to Green Bay into the frigid temperatures of Lambeau. Has that steeled this 49ers team for the NFC Championship game, or are you a little bit concerned that these road trips may exhaust the energy of the team eventually?
I think they're going to be okay. It's not a long trip down to Los Angeles. They're going to leave today, so they'll get down there. Tonight they'll get down there, sleep tonight, and be able to spend the day tomorrow. And in Southern California, it's not like they're getting on a plane and having to drive, even go up to Seattle. Which is kind of a dreary spot to go at this time of the year.
Yes, it
they get to
is.
go down to
Speaking of someone in Portland, it's very dreary.
right. So they get to go down to the sun and I'd be more concerned if they were flying out to Tampa Bay this week than going down to Los Angeles. But it's definitely a gauntlet. It's definitely a challenge. When the last time they've been in this position was 2013. They had to go on the road to Arizona in the last week of the season. Then they had to go to Green Bay, to Carolina for their first two rounds of the playoffs before going up to Seattle for the championship game. They ultimately lost in Seattle, but I don't think it had anything to do with them being tired. It just had to do with their quarterback having a complete meltdown in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that one was a nail biter. That was a game that brings back bad memories for me of sitting in the stands with those Seattle fans, and just a brutal, heart-wrenching loss in that one. The 49ers this time around, I agree with you. I'm thrilled that they're not flying out to Tampa today. That, first and foremost, is how I'm feeling about this, because that would be significantly more miles. And hell, if I've got to pick a quarterback who's more clutch between Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford, even though Stafford just beat Tom Brady last week, I'm still putting my money on Tom Brady, even with the injured squad that they had there in Tampa. I believe that they are battle-tested, a tighter unit because of everything that they've been through this season. I mean, they have experienced failure together. They have experienced hardship together. They have experienced significant road trips together. And so I think that's evidenced by this team. Kyle Shanahan said it in the presser today. After the game on Sunday, after the game Saturday, on Sunday, some of his players reached out to him and said, hey, can we go down to LA Friday night as if we were going to the East Coast? We want to get there a little bit early. We want to get locked in. That, to me, is a team that is focused.
Yeah, they're definitely focused. I think just based on everything that I've seen and heard from the team, and then just some of the videos I've seen from practice today, it definitely looks like they're locked in and ready to go. And I think they know what is at stake coming up on Sunday, and they're ready to take advantage of it. I think you heard it might have been Nick Bosa. One of the players yesterday basically said, if we don't make it if we don't win this game, then all the wins don't really mean anything this year.
Yes, I thought that was an interesting quote to put that out there. I want to say it was Kittle that threw that out there, that without that win, everything falls away from this season. And I actually disagree with the take as a fan. I believe that what the 49ers have done to this point is something that should be cherished, that should be remembered. But I think that's the appropriate mindset for the team to have. That's the mindset that you want your players to have, that everything's on the line this Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you want your players to go about it, right? And that is the way that they feel within the locker room. It's going to be different, I think, for us as fans. I look at it differently, and I also don't think that at the end of the day, that it's a completely lost season for them to if they do lose on Sunday. This is a team that, it's not like the early 80s and 90s 49ers, which were winning 10 games on an annual basis and were in the playoffs year after year after year. This is only the second time since 2013 that they've even made the playoffs. So, for me, I don't think it's a lost season if they don't win tomorrow.
No, I have to agree with you on that one. I do think that we judge them as if they are the teams from the 80s and 90s, but to your point, that they're not. That's a distant memory of an organization that didn't have to concede to a salary cap and therefore took advantage of it distinctly. Eddie D was not afraid to spend that money. All right, I think this one is going to be a street fight. I think that these teams, there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of physicality. There's embarrassment. There's a lot of factors that go into this one that lead me to believe it's going to be a battle of wills, that these teams will both come out, both attempt to punch each other in the mouth, get very physical, exert that physicality on the other team, exert that will on the other team. When you try and break this down analytically, Jack, do you see a smash mouth game favoring the 49ers or the Rams?
Oh, I think if it becomes a street fight, it's the 49ers game to lose. I saw the perfect analogy to this came up on Twitter this week from somebody, I can't remember who it was, but basically said at this point in the season, the styles make fights, and the 49ers are Rocky Balboa, and that's the perfect description of who this team is. They get punched in the mouth and they just keep coming at you. And then at the end of the game, they look like Rocky at the end of Rocky 2, just completely bloodied and beat up and barely able to tell their fans that they love them.
Barely able to stand at the end of the game.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, look at the way they walked off the field in Green Bay, right? You had George Kittle hobbling off the field. You had Deebo Samuel hobbling off. You had Trent Williams out there on one leg, and they were a beaten, battered team, and they just kept on going and ended up getting the win at the end. Rocky Balboa, that's this team.
It really was. I mean, when I was watching that, because I had a prime seat right there to watch all of them moving around live on the field, I was struck by just how beaten up we were at the end of that one, that we took a lot of body blows, a lot of shots to the face on that one. It very much reminded me of Rocky. I mean, Kittle wasn't moving right. It was, everybody was out there hobbling around, to your point. And yet, most of those players are off of the injury report. Most of those guys have just accepted the idea that that's what playoff football is. That's what this San Francisco 49ers team is. They're a physical brand, and they are going to impose that will. I have to agree with you that if it breaks out to be that type of a street fight, that's actually what the San Francisco 49ers are looking for. They may attempt to pick that fight and get the ground game going, pound the Rams, continually attempt to wear them down. That seems to favor the San Francisco 49ers in that respect.
Yeah, I don't think, we talked about this before. I just don't think that the Rams have the guys to match up physically with the 49ers if it comes into that style of game. Just go back and you watch the Week 18 game and you see the 49ers running through them in the second half. And that was a game in which they were down at that point, but they're physically dominating the game to even get back to 17-17. So I feel like it really benefits them, and I'm looking forward to seeing the way that this game plays out, because these are two very different teams in a lot of ways.
I am really looking forward to that as well. And you teed up something that transitions very nicely into the next topic about the Niners potentially having to make another comeback if they get punched in the mouth. But before we get there, going to get to a couple of super chats. Chris Royal disagreeing politely. Love you, Jack, but I disagree. I think Williams will play. He's been around for a while. I think as long as he has the game plan, he'll be rested and good. Chris, I have to hope that you're correct. I think that there's sound reason to Jack's take on it. The idea that he hasn't practiced at all, that's typically not a good sign. But I also agree with Chris in the sense that if there's a player who doesn't need to practice, it's someone like a Trent Williams or a Nick Bosa. It's your A-plus player on that side of the ball, and that's what Trent Williams is.
Yeah, I agree with him on that point. Yes, that's accurate. If he is able to go physically, he doesn't have to have been out at practice all week. He can go in there and make the plays and do what he needs to do, because he's been doing it for so long within this system. He knows the game plan. I think it'll be, at this point in the year, they're going out to practice. They're not even hitting or anything like that. So, I'm sure standing around watching is just as good as getting the reps for a guy like Trent Williams.
Right. Friday's that glorified walkthrough anyway. Chris coming in to double down and say he's just hoping you're wrong. Just a feeling on Chris's part that Trent is in. I hope that feeling is right, Chris. I think that gives the 49ers either a significant disadvantage or a significant boost if Williams is in there. That Niner guy coming in. Guys, great roundtable last night. I got a feeling the other Jimmy is going to make a big play on Kupp. Call it. Praying to God Jimmy G can just be solid. So talking about Jimmy Ward making that play. The key differentiator is Jimmy Ward is Jimmie. That is the little known difference of differentiating Jimmy from Jimmy G. But yes, I think that was a phenomenal roundtable. I had a blast on Jack's channel. If you didn't see it, by the way, great time to plug it. All of Jack's information is down below in the description. His Twitter handle, his YouTube page, and his site over on the Press Democrat. You should go down there, follow him on Twitter, subscribe to him on YouTube, and go read that freaking blog over there on the Press Democrat, because it's phenomenal stuff coming out there, and it's not behind a paywall, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, great roundtable. I like the prediction of Jimmy Ward. What effect do you think Jimmy Ward has on this game, Jack?
Well, Jimmy Ward's he's got to be key. One of the things that I was looking at in putting it together, like I said, I kind of told you I was writing the pregame.
Right.
The one thing that I also got out of this is I understand that Cooper Kupp's going to be the guy that everybody's going to focus on because he's got the big numbers, right? The big yardage totals. He's got 280 yards so far against the 49ers. I think 240, somewhere around there. He's put up big numbers against the 49ers, right? 18 catches, bunch of yards, but he only has one touchdown. So the issue when it comes to Jimmy Ward is Jimmy Ward a lot of times will come down and cover that tight end. Now, Tyler Higby has been a big part of the Rams offense this year against the 49ers. He actually, even though he only has 75 yards receiving on his 9 catches, he has three touchdowns. So Higby is a guy that I think could really cause problems for the 49ers, and that's where Jimmy Ward comes in, stopping that type of a player while letting the corners and Jaquiski Tartt work the top.
He's so good at that. I mean, I remember watching him on his Instagram account in the offseason, replaying some of the matchups of him locking down tight ends and him going through and saying, well, in this top tier, that's a guy who's not going to get more than 50 yards on me. This next tier, they're not getting more than 40. And I think Higby probably fits into where Jimmy believes he's going to limit him to 30 or fewer yards in this one. I think that's probably how he views this matchup.
Yeah, that would be fine. That if they can, that's right around where they've kept him. But the problem is that he did have those couple touchdowns in the second game here. So they just need to keep him out of the end zone. And I think if they can keep him out of the end zone, it's going to work out for the 49ers on Sunday because I have a feel. I don't think the Rams are going to get big shots on the 49ers. It's almost like they did last week against Tampa Bay. It's going to have
the Niners will attempt to keep most of it in front of them, playing the too high safety looks.
Yep, and they're going to have to work their way down the field. You're going to see some wide open catches in the middle of the field and stuff like that. But once they get down into the red zone, things get tighter, and then that's where you've got to take away guys like Higby.
That makes sense. Joe Stull coming in. Maybe the unknown Trent injury is more strategy from Kyle Shanahan to psych out McVay last minute like he did with Jimmy G weeks back. Hey, I hope so, Joe. Fingers crossed that Trent is far healthier than any of us believe. I do believe if he's out there, it's because he can give a full go of it, right? I don't think that they're going to throw a compromised Trent Williams out there.
I would hope not. I think the game is too important, and I understand that you'd rather have Williams out there than McKivitz, but throwing him out there could cost you the game if there's a couple, just one bad play because of an ankle injury early on.
Right. I mean, an ankle injury for an offensive lineman, that's something that you have to be aware of. Chris Royal seconding the idea that roundtable was phenomenal last night. Again, if you haven't seen it, it's available on Jack's channel. It was great. It was Jesse Naylor, Jack, myself, and Aaron from 49ers First Takes. It was killer. Great vibe. And we will definitely, as Chris says, definitely need to do it again. Very entertaining. If the Niners win and head on to the Super Bowl, I personally will make sure that happens again because I am also a little stitious and need to make sure that everything aligns just right for a 49ers victory each week.
If you're a little stitious, I'm superstitious. So. Okay, bad dad jokes. Let's go to the next one.
Hey, bad jokes are the best on YouTube. You need to have it because there are people on the other end just laughing their asses off at those stupid things we say. So here's the question. If it is a street fight and the Rams are successful as they were in Week 18 and coming out swinging haymakers, hitting the Niners in the mouth, punching them in the mouth, as Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Do you believe that this team would have another comeback effort in them like the one that was required in Week 18 if they get down something like 17-0?
If they get down 17-0, it's going to be tough. I mean, they were bailed out a little bit in the last one because of some of the play calling by the Rams at the end of the game. One of the things that worries me if they do fall behind is the Rams have done a very good job these first 2 weeks of the postseason of sticking to the running game. They haven't run the ball very well, but they've run it at high volume, 38 and 30 times in those two games. It's put them right around 35 minutes in time of possession. per game. So if the 49ers are in that situation, it's really hard to come back from being down by 17 points. You need a lot of things to turn your way. So, but going back to the bigger part of the question, I do expect the 49ers to get punched in the mouth, and I do expect them to be able to step right back and come right back with a punch. We kind of talked about that earlier. That's again that Rocky analogy with this team. They're just going to keep playing until the whistle sounds, and that's what makes this team so dangerous to go against.
Yeah, they have focused on being able to finish this season, and they seem to have crested some hill in that regard. Still some big tests remaining, and they need to continue, but to this point, some positive things. Agreed, the Rams in the postseason are only averaging 3.1 yards per carry, but they have upped their number of yards per game. They're now over 100, where for the regular season, they averaged 99 yards per game. 106.5 per game in the playoffs. So they're doing it just enough to be effective, to get that time of possession edge that you talked about. So they'll, I would think, be looking to do that again against the San Francisco 49ers, to try and wear out our defense in much the same way that we are going to attempt to wear down theirs. I tend to agree that they have a comeback in them, just not from something like 17. I think the Rams will come out fast. I won't be surprised if they get up a little early. I just am looking for the Niners to avoid that type of a gaffe where they allow LA to really jump all over them early.
Yeah, they need to come out and have a solid start on offense. They haven't done that. They did that against Dallas. They didn't do it the week before against the Rams, and they didn't do it last week against Green Bay. But they've got to have a Dallas type of start to this game on offense. I think.
Yes,
that's what they've done. That's what they did back in Week 10, and it's time for them to do that again.
And a much faster track at LA than those very slow grounds at Lambeau Field. I mean, honestly, being there in person, watching the field itself, feeling the cold firsthand, that game was heavily impacted by the weather. Even though it didn't really look like it potentially on the television, it absolutely was. I mean, you could just feel it. That Niner guy coming in really liked the 3 safety look from DeMeco Ryans, confused Rodgers on the last play. Hope to try to do the same thing to Stafford. 2 safety blitzes on 3rd and long. The only thing that I disagree with there is the idea of bringing too much against Stafford because of his propensity for success against the blitz. It is, what has made him into a great weapon this year for the Rams is his ability to deliver against the blitz. He is one of the best, if not the best in the league against pressure from more than 4. And that to me is the advantage for the Niners, is being able to generate pressure with 4D linemen, having only blitzed on 14% of our plays against Stafford so far this season, but generating a pass rush at near 50% of the time.
Yeah, they're really good. Stafford has been top notch against the blitz, as has Cooper Kupp. That's where the majority of his yards have come against the blitz and in man coverage. So I would expect to see, there's gonna be some blitz, but the 49ers are going to show a lot of pressure, and they're not going to bring pressure. It's one of the things that we've seen them do now in both of these first 2 playoff games. Really crowding the line of scrimmage and then bailing out at the last minute, but you don't know who's coming and who's going, and that's really been helpful for them. And I think we're going to see that again on Sunday against the Rams.
Yeah, I believe that's where that Niner guy hit the nail on the head, is confusing those coverages to attempt to confuse Matthew Stafford. We've forced 2 picks from him in each of the first 2 matchups this year. It would be wonderful if we could do that again. All right, let's go forward to a little throwback here. This is picking the brain of Jack Hammer, going back to 1990, the 89 season. The 1990 championship game at Candlestick Park. I was young enough to where it's hazy, but I believe I was there. You were there. Describe for us a little bit about just the kind of disdain that these 2 teams had for one another in that season. I saw the fights in the review that the replay I was watching. Fights popping off, a lot of irritation between those 2 squads back then, and it was a very physical game.
Yeah, very physical. They had 2 really good games during the regular season too. The Rams had come up to Candlestick and beat the 49ers 13-12 early in the regular season, and then the 49ers went down to Anaheim late in the year, Monday Night Football, and that's the Joe Montana John Taylor game, the 2 touchdowns from Taylor to come back and help them pull that out and win the NFC West division. I'm pretty sure they clinched it that night. And then from there, the game up here was a tough one. Both, the 49ers really, both, as you said, both teams got after it, but the 49ers were definitely the more physical of the two teams. And it was just a slugfest throughout. And it's funny because you go back and you look at the final score and it was 30-3, but that doesn't show how close that game was early on to getting away from the 49ers, because the Rams came out in the first possession, kicked a field goal. The 49ers 3 and out, and they turned the ball over with on a fumble by Brent Jones. And then with the score at 3-0, they had Flipper Anderson break free down the right sideline. It looks like it's going to be a touchdown. The Rams are going to go up 10-0. And all of a sudden, out of the midfield, you have Ronnie Lott screaming from the middle of the field to just barely tip that ball away at the last minute. And as I was telling you, Rob, before we went live, at that time, my seats were in section 7 and underneath the overhang at Candlestick Park, which was right behind the goalpost on the south end, and it was one of the best views you could have because everything's just right in front of you. And there's 3 plays that are very vivid in my mind when I think of that game. That being one of them, the other one being the touchdown pass from Joe Montana to John Taylor right at the end of the first half, which put the 49ers up 21-3. Because remember now so you get the Lott play, keeps them from scoring. The 49ers then come out in the next 3 possessions are touchdowns, and then after that, in the second half, you have the 49ers kicking 3 field goals. But the memory from the second half is with about 4 minutes left to go. Jim Everett drops back to pass, and Charles Haley's coming off his right side, and that's when Everett decided that he was going to bury himself in the Candlestick turf so he wouldn't get hit, and Larry Roberts fell on top of him, and from that moment on, he became Chris Everett. So.
Going back to the Jim Rome dig there. If you haven't seen it, if you're a new football fan, newer generation, go back, watch that game, watch those highlights, and watch the Jim Rome clip as well. There's some good laughs to be had there, no question about it. Yeah, this is a rich history. I mean, running through the teams in the 90s where the Niners were, in my mind, clearly the favorites, and the Rams, the greatest show on turf, just came out of nowhere and stole the glory for a couple of seasons, right? And it just has been that type of rivalry that there's rich history to. It may not have the same level of fervor as the 49ers at Seahawks because of more recent memories, but I think this Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan matchup has created something that the NFL can run with as far as a storyline. And so we're bringing this rivalry back up to the forefront of 49ers fans' minds. And now that we're reliving it, man, there's some rich stuff there. There's some good disdain for the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, back in those days, it was the 49ers and the Rams. That was the rivalry in the NFC West. They were actually the only 2 teams on the West Coast that were a part of the NFC West, right?
Right. You had the Saints being in the division, and
the Falcons, because everybody knows that Georgia's on the West Coast, and
right, as it should be.
Yeah, and so that was a big rivalry, and it's crazy that this is only the second time that they've played each other in the postseason.
That's wild. And both championship games. Yeah,
real quick before you just kind of sticking on that old time rivalry, you got to remember too, who was it? Wasn't it Tim McDonald after a big win over the Rams? I think it was like the 17th straight win from the 49ers over the Rams or some crazy number like that, and he came out with same old Rams. Same old Rams.
We will need to pull that back when we get the victory this weekend, let me tell you. All right, so obviously the body bag game moniker has gotten a lot of play time because it came up in Week 18. George Kittle brought it back up at the end of the game, talked about it at the presser, and it has made its rounds yet again in this one. Do you believe, and this was an interesting take that as I was just on with Grant Cohn earlier, that he believed that the Rams would attempt to play a tighter game and not really be sort of a high-flying offense. Do you believe that the Rams will try to be the more physical team of the two, or will they try to be the more finesse team and beat you with the air attack?
It sure sounds to me, at least from the talk, that they're talking a big game, like they're going to come out and be more physical and pay back and those kind of things. And if that's the case, I think that plays into the Niners' hands because, hey, if you've reached this level and all of a sudden you're going to change up the way that you go about fighting because you don't think you can match up with the opponent otherwise, I think that says a lot about the way that these two teams are coming into this game. So is it a body bag game? I don't know about that, but it's definitely going to be physical from the 49ers, and that's the way I think they come at every game is they try to put you in the ground.
Yes, I agree that it's strange for the Rams to all of a sudden say, well, now we're just going to out physical a team. And it does strike you as being changing the course of action, changing the way in which your identity is built just for this one matchup. And that speaks to a team that may be in your head at this point. And it's fair to think that's the case, given the Niners' record against the Rams over the last six. It's an interesting one for me. I just can't get past the idea that I believe the 49ers team to be the more physically dominant of the two. I struggle to imagine a scenario where it turns into a street fight, where it turns into a brawl, and that it's not in the 49ers' favor. I love the question. I believe it was Eric Branch asked Debo today about that Walter Payton quote, asking about, Walter Payton had this idea of hitting force with force and somehow lessening the blow on himself by delivering the blow onto someone else. Now, physics may disagree with that because, each reaction has an equal and opposite reaction, right? So when you hit hard, you are in effect getting hit hard. But I think that this 49ers team lives by that mantra that they hit force with force. And if a team is going to come at them in that way, that now this is the 49ers type of game.
Yeah, I think you're right there. If that's what the way that they're going to come and they're going to try to change up their style, I think this plays in the 49ers' favor. And sometimes when teams try to be over aggressive or try to be aggressive when they're not normally that way, it leads to some errors and penalties as well. So maybe the 49ers are going to get a break with some. They've been pretty smart with the way that they've gone about their business. We haven't seen them have very many stupid penalties with fighting at the end or something like that. Let the Rams be that team this week. Go out there and continue to knock people down and let them be the ones that lose their cool.
Yes, indeed. Some unfortunate confirmation in the chat, assuming that we're not being lied to, which I don't think we are, considering it's Swan Song coming in, that Jimmy slipped up in the presser and mentioned that Trent has a high ankle sprain. So Kyle Shanahan may not have wanted to give that information away. Jimmy is okay with it getting out there, but maybe, just maybe, that's because Jimmy has some inkling that Trent's going to be able to go. But to your point earlier, Jack, I mean, if it is a high ankle sprain, that would seem to bode for Trent not being able to go. I mean, high ankle sprains are typically multi-week injuries.
Yeah, they're typically worse, and that's funny that he comes out and he says he actually said those high ankle sprains are never a fun thing. I know from experience. How many times this year do we have to have the head coach say one thing in a press conference and then have the quarterback come in and just say completely? I mean, do these guys not have a little bit of a conversation or watch what each other are saying so that they can at least come out and say
we need a new head of PR for the 49ers. Clearly, they're not getting prepped prior to their freaking interviews. Come on now. Come on.
This goes back to when Garoppolo was injured earlier this year, and it went from a sprain to from a twist to a sprain to all kinds of different things in the course of one press conference. So
yes. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Let's keep our fingers crossed that Trent Williams is superhuman in his ability to heal as he is in his ability to block on the field. Because one of the things the 49ers want to do here is run rampant over the Rams, and it becomes significantly harder to do if you don't have your road paver out there in Trent Williams. I believe that, and I guess it's an obvious statement, so it doesn't need to be qualified with I believe. The 49ers run game has been critical to their success so far this season. It's been critical to their success underneath Kyle Shanahan because that's the run-first identity that his teams have. In 2019, they were able to do some pretty spectacular things in the postseason. The 49ers, compared to their opponents in 2019 in the postseason, rushed for 612 yards to 212 by their opponents. Do you believe, Jack, that the 49ers can take this thing to another level and get the run game going against the Rams, similar to the way in which they were able to run over teams in 2019?
The possibility is there, right? The possibility is there for them to do that. We saw them run the ball really well against the Rams back in week 10. They had a ton of carries. I think it was 155 yards on 41 carries or 40 carries, whatever that number was. And then they had 135 the second time around. So
Right.
for the number for the 49ers, the magic number when it comes to running rampant in this game is the 49ers need to get to 30 carries. They're since 2019, since you brought that time up, since 2019, the 49ers are 23-1 when they run the ball 30 times in a game. Against the Rams in their 6-game winning streak, the 49ers have gotten over 30 yards or 30 carries 5 of the 6 times. The only time they didn't was the second game of 2019 when they had to come from behind. And so that was the only one they didn't. But they had 44 earlier this year, and then earlier in 2019 they had 41 in the game down in Los Angeles. So it's definitely something the 49ers have to do. I think in order to win, they need to run the ball well, because that's, especially if Trent Williams doesn't play, that's one of the ways that you slow the Rams down, because they're not able to get after the quarterback if you're pounding them constantly, because then play action slows them down a little bit better, and they're just going to be worn out a little bit overall from the physical pounding that they'd be taking.
Yeah, I believe that the 49ers, to your point, have all of the ingredients needed in order to get the run game going at that level. It just becomes a question of, how much the Los Angeles Rams sell out to try and entice Kyle Shanahan to get away from it, right? Kyle Shanahan instinctively looks for weaknesses on the defense. The Rams defense is certainly suspect in the middle of the field. You could see some next level scheming where Sean McVay and the Rams defense attempt to coax Kyle Shanahan into leaning on Jimmy Garoppolo more than the run game. But as long as they don't fall for that, as long as the 49ers, much like Edward is calling for here, focus on smash mouth football, keep this thing a street fight, to me, that's the recipe for success. Get to those 30 carries and, go from there. That to me is what the 49ers are going to be looking to do against the Rams, and should be able to have success given the Rams defense and what they have allowed so far this season, in particular against the San Francisco 49ers. Let's flip it to the other side and talk about the 49ers defensive line and their dominance. I mean, hell, the defense as a whole hasn't allowed more than 24 points in months, right? And the pass rush has been overpowering opposing teams lately. 5 sacks against the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. 5 sacks against the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. And 5 sacks against the Los Angeles Rams in Week 18. I mean, it's wild, the surge that the 49ers pass rush is currently having. Can they maintain that level against Los Angeles Sunday?
I think so. I think, I don't see any reason why they can't. If they can stop the running game, which is huge, go from there, and that leads into their pass rush. And I think the 49ers pass rush, as you said, the 15 sacks over the last 3 games. On top of that, they have 33 quarterback hits. So they're getting after the quarterback. And what's crazy about the 33 quarterback hits is that they only hit Aaron Rodgers 6 times last week. So that shows you how many times they got to Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford in the two sandwich games around that. So I think the 49ers, that's one of the main keys of this game. The 49ers have got to get after the run, the quarterback, and they've got to make Matthew Stafford move his feet and not be able to sit in the pocket, because if he's able to do that, it's going to be a long day for the 49ers.
And he is a wildly different quarterback when he has that time versus when he's getting hit. I guess every quarterback is, so it's not a shot against Matthew Stafford. But I agree with GD5 coming in here. Great topic. Not being talked about enough is our defensive line, the depth and the stamina of that unit, wearing out opponents in the second half of games. You see that they just are overpowering teams for the full 60 minutes. The ability, it's like the Niners hit home runs on so many of these role players, just able to contribute a little bit more than you would have expected from any of these. When we traded a 6th-round pick for Charles Omenihu, I would not have anticipated a sack and a half against Dallas. When we saw Samson Ebukam earlier in the season, I would not have expected the progression that we have seen in the second half of the season. When you look at contributions across the board, Arden Key, you signed him to a 1-year deal. You did not expect the resurgence, especially rushing from the interior. It's that depth that to me is you're less reliant on one player having a star game. You're just relying on everyone to do what they've been doing for months. It seems like less of a logical leap to me.
Yeah, I think you're correct on that. The 49ers, their defensive line, you talk about the depth there. That's part of what they're doing. They're able just to kind of come in waves. They get those starters out of there and those backups come in, and it doesn't seem like there's a let up. And that plays out throughout the whole team. It goes to the offensive side as well. That's just the way that the team is. This team is built deep. They come at you. They just keep coming at you, and they adjust throughout the game to the point where by the time the fourth quarter comes around, they start to assert their will against the opposition. And that defensive line is one of those examples of it. These guys have been tremendous over the second half of the year. You talked about the numbers just for the last 3 weeks, but the numbers over the second half of the year for this group have been much improved from where they were the first 6 weeks. So from week 7 on, they've been very good on the defensive line.
Really phenomenal. E. Kim, one of our sneakerheads here on the channel, coming in at Rob and at Jack. The 49ers D-line getting early pressure on Stafford is an early key. I agree. The Rams are going to come out and attempt to punch the 49ers in the mouth. That counter punch will be that defensive line. And the question is, can they get home? Well, a little deep dive on one of the members of that defensive line. I just wanted to take a moment to express my wonderment at Jordan Willis and just how refreshing I found his presser to be the other day. He doesn't want all the glory. He said in the presser, I didn't even know I blocked it. I just heard the sound. Like the humble nature coming across there. To me, it screamed the team, the team, the team. All the adversity that they went through this year, all the criticism that was levied at the entire team. He touched on all of that as for reasons why he didn't want to come out to the post-game presser and get all the glory for that one play. He said, I was the lucky guy that got to execute what I was asked to do. And again, just opposite of pretty much what you see throughout the league and throughout life of people wanting to lay claim to what they've done. I was just so refreshed to see that attitude from Jordan Willis.
Oh yeah, it's tremendous to have a guy that comes out and says that. And shoot, I think that guy needs to actually step up and take a little bit of a bow for what he has done, because he has been a big key. He's been a big part of this turnaround over the second half of the year. He had a little bit of a rough start to his time because he missed the first half of the season with the suspension and so on. He had been with the team during training camp, but he missed some time there. And when he came back, it took him a few weeks to get his legs underneath him. It's been good over the last few weeks. Obviously, the special teams play is huge, but we're talking about a guy here who has a quarterback hit in going back to the Seattle game in week 13. Those 8 weeks, he has a quarterback hit in all but 2 of those weeks. He has 3 quarterback sacks. His play against Dallas with Dak Prescott and the pressure he put on there turned into the turnover that led to the 49ers getting up 23-7. Really kind of won the game for him there. He had the 2 plays against the Packers on special teams. So I appreciate him, the way that he approached that. At the same time, I think he deserves to stand up there, and he doesn't need to toot his own horn. Anybody who's watching can see that's watched closely should be able to see what Jordan Willis has meant to this team over their run into the playoffs here.
Yeah, and if you're unclear on what he means to this team, go watch the post game and watch the guys in the locker room celebrate him getting the game ball. They lose their minds in that moment. It's very clear. Nick Bosa coming to the presser and talking about his love for Jordan Willis is very clear that he is appreciated on that unit for what he's bringing to the table.
Yeah, and there's also a real quick. There's a clip of the block that I retweeted. I responded to yesterday. So anyway, I didn't retweet it, but it's a really cool view because it's from the field level and you can see the block. And then you see after when everybody's starting to celebrate, I think it's, Ross Dwelly goes over and he basically, jumps on Jordan Willis to because he knows who made the play there. Because they were both right there. They were both right next to each other when it occurred.
I'm telling you, I get special vibes from this team. Just the way they feel about one another, the way they celebrate one another. I don't think that any of them are lying in that defensive line room when they talk about the band of brothers that they have there and the love that they have in that unit and the fact that they're playing for each other, not their own personal glory, but that each one is hopeful that their brothers in arms will also have success, and that they know as an entire unit, when they all have success, that's how they dominate. It's not about one guy. It's not about Nick Bosa. It's about the unit as a whole and what they're able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things, and that's, you go back to that line group, and that's one of my favorite groups to watch during training camp this year. Was the first time I've been able to do it, but during training camp, that was probably my favorite group to watch, just because of the way that Chris Kasarik coaches. Yes. He's from the time practice starts till the time they leave. I don't know if he stops talking, and that's not a bad thing. I mean,
no.
When I'm saying talking, he's constantly coaching up from the start of the practice until the end of the practice, and that's one of the things that I really enjoy about coaches, or guys who go out to practice and work with their position group from start to end. There's no reason to shut up, because there's always something that you can talk about, whether it's positive or a negative, and that's what this guy does. And I don't know if he'll ever go beyond being a defensive line coach, but he's just a heck of a coach, and I can understand why his guys love playing for him.
Hopefully he loves doing exactly what he's doing, and the Niners are willing to compensate him as one of the highest paid defensive line coaches in the league, and he can just stay right there doing exactly what he's doing for us right now.
It works for me.
Yes, it should. Fosse coming in here. 49ers defense, special teams, and run game all got hot at the right time. How much does a team getting hot in the playoffs factor into winning it all? I think it's a huge factor. Health and when you're peaking are maybe the two most important factors going into the playoffs, because every team that makes it into the playoffs has met a certain minimum bar for how good of a team they are, for the record that they've accrued from the regular season. So those teams that have substantial wins from the regular season have proven themselves to be battle tested in that regard. If they are healthy, and if they are firing on all cylinders in the playoffs at a high level, high energy, as the Niners are, I feel like that's a distinct advantage. And you see it happen multiple times where a team just gets hot at the right time. The Tampa Bay Bucks last year, the Green Bay Packers, the last time they won the title. It happens, and it's very, very noticeable to the eye test, in my opinion, Jack.
Yeah, the Philadelphia Eagles a few years ago when
Right.
they did it and they ran through and they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Shoot, the 49ers, keeping it with the 49ers group here, the 1988 49ers are the perfect example of a team based on the defense, the special teams, the run game, everybody getting hot at one point, taking you through the playoffs. Because again, I know a lot of people like to talk about the 2011 Giants and compare the 49ers this year to that team. But for me, this team is all about the 1988 49ers. I know Jimmy Garoppolo is not Joe Montana. Take that out of the equation.
Right.
If you look at what that 49ers defense did, though, they struggled, and they were not bad, but they weren't great either in the first half of the year. And they turned it around over the second half of the year. I think if you look at the numbers, the way the numbers play out, the number one defense in the league that year was the Chicago Bears. They allowed 13.4 points per game over the course of the season. They kind of went up and down as well. They kind of lost it at the end of the year. The 49ers gave up 13.3 points per game over the second half of the season. They only gave, if you go back into the playoff run that year, they gave up one touchdown to an opponent, and that was in the Minnesota. Who did they play? I think it was the Bears. I think scored a touchdown. No, it was Minnesota scored a touchdown in the divisional game. They missed the extra point. But other than that, the only other touchdown scored against the 49ers throughout that playoff run was a special teams kickoff return in the Super Bowl by Stanford Jennings.
Man, pulling out those stats from 88. I love it. I love that comparison as well. I just wanted to put this up because I love it. True told, not sold, saying at Rob, they love each other. Common love to achieve a common goal. And that common love to the common goal has led to these uncommon results, and they have been special to watch. Ellis10, one of our sneakerheads coming in, also from Jimmy's presser. Jimmy also said his shoulder feels great. No pain.
Baby.
Well, that's a positive. The other update feels more meaningful. The one on Trent Williams, that one is weighing a little heavier, but this one is positive news. I'll take anything positive that I can get at this point because, I want to stay positive going into this one. And I'm going to stay optimistic that maybe Trent can go.
Yeah, and Garoppolo was pretty much off the. I know his name was on the injury report, but he was a full participant all week, so that tells you, I think, everything you need to know about his body at this point.
I agree, and I think people have pointed to the inconsistent play as maybe being the injury, but because it has vacillated between the first and the second half, I'm not so convinced that it's an injury thing and not just how defenses are playing the 49ers and standard Jimmy Garoppolo play. I'm not too worried about the injury. I think Jimmy's going to be able to deliver, and if asked to, I think he could put up some points on this Rams team because of where their weakness is in the center of the field and Jimmy Garoppolo's uncanny ability to target that area.
Yeah, Garoppolo's completed just under 75% of its passes this year against the Rams. So if the 49ers offensive line can protect him, I think he's going to have a good game on Sunday. And I would push back on a lot of the stuff that we've heard about Jimmy Garoppolo throughout this playoff run. I thought he played an excellent game in the first half against Dallas. I thought that he played very well against Green Bay. If the pass to Kittle gets caught in the first half, the numbers are completely different and everything changes about the way that outlook. I understand the interceptions there, but even if you take a time and if you go back and you watch the film breakdown that I did with Grant Cohn on Tuesday, and you go back and you listen to the film breakdown that JT O'Sullivan did, you're going to see one thing from both of us that we talk about in regards to the interception by Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a mistake by Garoppolo because of where he threw the ball.
Right.
He should have thrown it to the sidelines to get the guy out of there. But George Kittle also deserves a little bit of the blame for the way that play comes down because he does not break back to the quarterback. He continues to run along the line at the goal line instead of working his way back.
I thought the same thing. He treated it as if it was 4th and goal when it was actually 1st and goal, right? He stayed in the end zone as if they needed the touchdown there. He should have been angling back to the ball as the defender was. He's got to beat him to the jump point. Yeah,
it's Garoppolo's fault for the interception. He's the one that let the ball go.
No question.
But there's a little bit of both, and I was relatively positive on Garoppolo's performance against Green Bay, and so was JT O'Sullivan. And JT O'Sullivan is a guy that I think a lot of 49er fans who watch that 49er film room respect his opinion. And it's funny because his opinion of the game came out very similar, and his breakdown was very similar to what we talked about on Tuesday with Grant.
I also, again, I cannot overstate this. I was just impressed with every player that was out there because of the conditions. I think it cannot be overstated just how cold. 5th coldest game in Lambeau history. A lot of games have been played there in the postseason, and it gets freaking cold. So that is, again, like when I took off my gloves to shoot some of those quick videos that I put out, within 60 seconds, my fingers were numb. And it took a while to get them warm with the little hand warmer things that are putting out 110 degrees, which, by the way, I left a couple in my pockets and burned little red circles on both of my thighs because of those things sitting there. But it kept me warm, and that's all that mattered. Sometimes you got to take one for the team, right?
There you go. Exactly. I'm glad that I would have loved to have been in Green Bay in the press box because,
yes.
but you guys, I heard your stories, and I was the fact that first off that you're out there and your hands are freezing, but then on top of that you're sitting on a metal bench in freezing cold weather. It was
unbelievable.
Yeah, you deserve some kind of like a quad, a candlestick, or something like that for making it through that game.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're going to be there on Sunday, as am I. Very excited for it. When you look at this one, where's the pressure? Is it squarely on the shoulders of the underdog who has lost 6 in a row and believes they're the underdog even though they are favored in this one? Or is the pressure on the 49ers who have to keep this win streak alive? Where do you see it falling between these two teams?
I think that the 49ers should go into this game without feeling any kind of pressure. They're playing with house money to have gotten to the point that they've reached. They're on the road. they have nothing to. They have really. I mean, they have everything to lose, but at the same time, nothing to lose. Right? They're the team that's going on the road, and so I would say that I think the Rams are the ones that should be feeling more pressure in this game.
I agree with that. I agree the Niners are playing with house money. I agree with Jerry Rice stating that the pressure's all on the Rams' heads at this point. And they should be loose in that regard, that they truly are the underdogs. They are the ones that are favored to lose this one according to Vegas. And that's the important one. The Rams, in my book, are attempting to sell themselves on this idea of being the underdogs. They're attempting to motivate themselves by saying they're the underdogs. And again, that to me is just further evidence that they're in their own heads about this one, that the Niners are in the Rams' heads about this one.
Everything that's coming out of LA leads you to believe that this game is in the Rams' heads, right? From the way that this whole ticket sales thing goes,
Yes.
and in the players' wives coming out and talking about this, because those players' wives, not that they don't know what's going on, but that they're coming about it because they're hearing about it, right?
Right.
That's why they're talking about it, and it's just been a topic of conversation throughout. I think the 49ers fans are going to travel really well from everything I hear. And if they can get loud and make it a big deal, kind of like they did back in week 18, that's good. That's really going to play into the 49ers favor.
Yes, it is. Robbie coming in saying, I live in Wisconsin and I was impressed. Hey, that's someone who has put up with those elements, and he was impressed at what the Niners were able to do playing on the frozen frickin' tundra. And yes, it was quite frozen. Sean 951 Niners coming in, one of our sneakerheads doing a good deed, saying 400 watching currently. Hit those likes for Rob Faithful. Appreciate that. It's always a good time to say, if you enjoy the content, please do hit the like button. It helps Jack and I amplify our signal. You can subscribe to my channel. Jack's information is down below. You can follow him on Twitter. You can subscribe to his YouTube channel. And you can go visit the Press Democrat site, which is a free blog for you to be a part of. Get that Niners dialogue going in this one. Thank you for that, Sean951. Much appreciated. Absolutely. All right, let's close this one out on the topic du jour, the most important question on the table of beating LA. There's just something so satisfying about that chant, beat LA. Every city loves it. Everybody gets behind it. It's easy to hate this group. What do you see as the keys to the matchup, Jack? And if you're comfortable sharing how you think this one breaks out.
Yeah. Well, first off, the beat LA it just rolls off the tongue. It's just perfect, right? Beat LA. It just works perfect. On top of that, as far as for me, this game is all about what happens up in the front. It's all about the offensive line and the defensive line. I think the 49ers have the better groups when you put the two together on the offense and the defensive line. These two teams are extremely close. Everything about these two teams, if you look at their numbers, like the points scored, the points allowed, yards given up, yards allowed, all that kind of stuff is very close. It's going to come down to turnovers. If one team, in a lot of ways, it's the battle in the trenches and turnovers.
Yes.
And the 49ers, if they can hold on to the football, play their game, they're going to win this game. And I say 49ers just need to hold the Rams to 24. If they can hold the Rams to 24, the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl. I would throw out a score of, say, 27-24 for the final.
I love that score, and I love that prediction. I've got it breaking out a little bit differently, and just looking at the keys to the game a bit more high level. I think you're spot on about the trenches, about the turnovers. To me, it's about the 49ers and their focus on finishing this year. The idea that Kyle Shanahan seems to have crested that hill to some extent. Now, he's still got to prove it on the world's biggest stage, and this is the closest you can get to that, right? The NFC Championship is that step before the biggest stage of the world in the Super Bowl, so they're going to have to finish in this one. But resiliency is something that this team has shown in spades all season long. Every time they have gotten punched in the mouth, they have been able to respond. They have risen from failure. And to me, that says something. That is an opportunity for learning. Every time you fail quickly, because it just shows you what isn't the way to go. It offers an opportunity to go back and try to be successful again. And the 49ers have failed and, more importantly, responded from that. And this team's attitude, to me, again, you get down to these close games, these street brawl type of games, the love that you have for the man next to you, the willingness that you have to die on a sword to protect the dude to one side or the other can be the difference in these ones, because it is about will. If you go back and listen to an emotional leader like a Ray Lewis talk about defenses imposing their will on offenses, man, it gives me shivers to hear that dude speak. It's powerful stuff. And you can only imagine that that's exactly what happens to the people in the huddle with him, that now these guys are willing to run through a brick wall for one another. And that's what I see in this 49ers team. Lastly, I agree with you. You already called it, forcing turnovers. I think the 49ers' ability to pressure Stafford without blitzing will be the key to this game, to make sure he's uncomfortable, to make sure he throws some of those picks. I do see this being a bit higher scoring than you, and I guess I hope I'm wrong on that, because I think that 49ers defense holding them to 24 is a good barometer. But I see this as potentially maybe a couple of defensive scores or special team scores. I think the offenses will be relentlessly aggressive in this one, and I think it'll show on the scoreboard. I've got the 49ers winning 34-27. So a little bigger margin of victory, but a higher scoring shootout, which may be worse on the nerves than a defensive one. Either way, it's going to be a nail biter.
It'd be fantastic to see the 49ers come out like they played against Dallas, right? Score a touchdown on their opening drive, continue moving the ball easily in the first half, but instead of kicking field goals, scoring touchdowns, and maybe come out, go into halftime with a 21 points in the first half and be going at 21-10. I mean, just imagine how that would make the second half if they could go in with a 2-score lead like that.
Oh, that would be sweet. Rigo coming in with the nerves. I've never been more nervous in my life. Trying to beat the Rams 3 straight in a year is scary. Dodgers got the Giants. Hey, a little bit of payback for SF against LA coming. I saw Steve Kerr, to start the presser, was talking about let's go Niners. I just love how the Bay Area comes together, and we come together strongest in our hatred of LA. That seems to be something that inspires everyone in the Bay to be like, oh yeah, F those guys.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, there's nothing you mentioned that earlier in the show. The rivalry, right, is a lot of people think of it being the Seahawks, but the real rivalry, it's always been the Rams. And now that both teams are back to a high level, it is exactly what you said, F these guys.
Yes, and it is beautiful to behold. I love it. I'm here for the playful hate, the disdain that exists here, because it's all in good fun. And at the end of the day, I'm grateful for where the Niners are now. I'm grateful for this season. I'm grateful for this team. I think they can do special things, and I think they're going to do that this Sunday. And Jack and I are going to freaking be there to witness history. It is going to be epic. Jack, thank you so much for coming on today. As always, I enjoy our time together. You're such an insightful dude. I just want to say thank you for coming on the program.
Oh, thanks for having me. I love coming on and chatting with you. I tell you that all the time. It's always fun to come on here and break it down, especially with a guy who's seen so much of the 49ers like I have, which I really appreciate. And I also appreciate the fact that you really get into the nuance of everything. And it's a lot of fun to have those back and forths with you.
Yes, it is. It most definitely is. We have seen a lot of shit, Jack, and we're about to see some more. It is going to be phenomenal. I will be streaming this weekend, but I'll be in LA. So follow me on Twitter at The Left Shoe if you want to know when. And just before I was about to go out, Sean951 coming in. Got to throw it up. Rams have 278 yards and 265 yards in the games this year. Once the 49ers settle down, like we did in Green Bay and Week 18, we adjust and the D balls out. Coaching is better, and Stafford will be stressed out. 49ers 28, Rams 13. Sean, I hope that's true, because I will be sweating a hell of a lot less if that is the outcome on Sunday. I love the positivity. As I said, I will be streaming this weekend, but it'll be at random times. Follow me on Twitter if you want to know when. Follow Jack on Twitter if you want to know when he's going live and to get his game time updates, as he'll be in the press box, not maddeningly insane in the stands like I will be. But until next time, Jack, if we will be back again next week, count on that. Until next time, cheers, 49er faithful.